I thank the arrangers of this webinar, both Samunati and ETH. And I am privileged to be moderating this panel of veteran people from the industry. You have all been working with several different segments of the agricultural lending and in particular the FPO lending space for a considerable period of time. So today we take time out to examine what is happening in this space, what kind of requirements are there, who is meeting what, and whether what's getting done by government policy establishments and in individual institutions, whether these actually make way for creating a better lending and borrowing environment for FPCs. I think when we talk about flow of capital to FPOs, we can start right from equity, though external equity is not an option for whether companies that are there where it is specifically restricted to farmer members, or in the case of cooperatives where external capital is never received inside. So we talk about things like mezzanine capital or quasi-equity kind of a thing, where we patiently wait with investments over a long period of time to create the ground level, investments that FPCs need to make. We also look at things like term capital for investment that they may need to make in infrastructure, some of their systems, then production loans, whether it is for processing or even for procurement and then storing for a while before the market, even trade loans, which basically cover the period between aggregation and then realization of the produce value. Also, we do have sometimes other requirements apart from all this of a very different nature coming from outside, which might be to prepare for technology enablement things. And apart from loans and this kind of quasi-equity, there are also requirements for grant funds of several types, because FPOs, they are social creatures as they begin, and maybe over a 7-8 year period, they might stabilize into commercial entities. Even then, they will be profit making, not really profit accumulating kind of entities by their form and the design. So we will try and look at the different aspects of how the funding and the capitalizing of these FPOs happens. I think we will have it in some 2 or 3 rounds to make this conversational. Initially, we look at what are the actual components of the capital requirements and what are the important parts of this. As we see, what are the types of funding that FPO requires very importantly, and what is the nature of this demand that arises from, say, about 1,000 FPOs today out of the 8,000 plus, which is estimated to be in existence. Yeah, the lack of data is a real limitation even in demand assessment. So what is the type of demand we have, and is this demand qualitatively good and vibrant? And whether anyone has some idea what might be the overall volume of these requirements, and what kind of supply exists. Do we see a large number of suppliers stepping up? They are offering into this space of the different kinds of funding that is required. Maybe I will start with Sushila, because they have the largest kind of portfolio in the country and for a very long period of time. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving me an opportunity, and you've really covered all the gamuts of funding which are required by the FPOs, and luckily I have an answer on all those fronts. One is there is no denial that every FPO has to have some amount of share capital, and we all have kept a benchmark of at least 2 lakh minimum share capital, and about 45 to 50% do not have that kind of share capital. So when it comes to the lending part of it, yes, we have to be careful about the share capital. Second is coming to the mezzanine capital. We, as you may be aware, NAPKISAN has entered into an MOU with Tamil Nadu government, and we are running a scheme on behalf of Tamil Nadu government, mezzanine capital scheme for FPOs which are present in Tamil Nadu, and these are basically for FPCs. So your question would be why FPCs and not cooperatives? So the comfort of the government was basically in FPCs because of the governance issue and transparency and compliances. So they wanted these funds to flow into these companies where they can see some results very shortly. Very happy to share with you that about 9 crores of mezzanine capital we have released this year. As on 31st March. And the basic objective is already prevalent in the name itself. Basically, it is to help them tide over the constraints of capital, to see that this amount which will be sitting in their books as a debenture will be, they'll be able to leverage upon that for further borrowings, carry on their activities, and most of them are using it for processing units, infrastructure, and here and there for working capital. After 5 years, they're supposed to remit back the amount, and they also pay a nominal interest. So the idea here is to see that the FPC owns up, because in a way grants are required, but too much of grant will also make them lax, and they may not have an ownership concept over there. So mezzanine capital definitely helps them to grow up where they are not able to mobilize enough funds. That is one part. And coming to lending, yes, their requirements are both on the working capital and the term loans. But we have seen by experience that 75% of the loans that are required by FPOs is on the working capital front. And you appreciate that their needs have been assessed only in the last 4 or 5 years. And the leaders right now in the sector are Samunnati and NAPKISAN. Both are NBFCs. And supplier side, yes, there are suppliers, but I think this year has been slightly better. We've seen SBI and a couple of banks coming forward. In fact, we've also been approached for co-origination of loans, but I said that maybe we'll have to wait for 2 or 3 years, because we are still on the exploratory phase, and FPOs have not taken shape, or they are not come of age to tap these funds. So you're on mute, I think.
Yeah, I see that. Thank you. That's an exciting, very quick summary, and beautifully done. You are saying a couple of banks are coming forward in the recent times. I'm hoping Kiran is one of those people. So let us hear from Kiran.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much, sir, for the introduction given. And at IndusInd Bank, we specifically feel that FPOs is a very focused sector for the bank as well. And when it comes to the capital, we really look at any FPO's life cycle into 2 different phases. One is the nascent FPO stage, and second is the mature FPO stage. So we understand specifically that government equity grants, or say CSR funds as grant basically are also required when FPOs are at their nascent stage, because this is really required to bring in the required confidence in attracting members and building a social capital. And not only that, but also in capacity building of the members or the management team, such that they really bring in larger farmer groups to bring in a critical mass, because for any FPO to really operate, they would certainly require a critical mass to be available. So important. And similarly, other way that we feel is that there could be a 10% equity in a producer company by any other institutional value chain participant. So I am really not sure, but if the regulation can allow that, that will really help in creating a professional management team for the FPO, and thereby enhancing the turnaround time of an FPO becoming a nascent FPO to a matured FPO. So that is one point. And of course, next comes the requirements of a mature FPO for doing their business, which is again in the form of a working capital, as well as term loans for infrastructure development. Certainly, while this is there, we also feel personally in IndusInd Bank, we feel that while we promote input or produce trade and then value addition for post harvest mechanisms or post harvest processes, we also feel that alternate livelihoods promotion fund should also be made available to these FPOs, as well as within the FPO level there could be farmer interest groups or certain individual members who would like to take up alternate livelihoods, and this overall we feel that this will really help the entire FPO to become a sustainable unit. So what we suggest is that if there are certain government subsidies that will help in FPOs taking up such kind of post-harvest value addition projects, this will help not only build a local economy at the local level, but also it will benefit the community as a whole. So these are the kind of capitals that we envisage should be in the offing, or at a policy level there should be changes which will help FPOs. So specifically, coming to our IndusInd Bank, on what we are doing for this, we feel that this is a long-term approach that we took, and we have specific product programs where we go. This is the product program approach. Under this, what we feel is that there will be a specific focus on these FPOs when we approach through a product program. Secondly, we try to understand holistic requirements of the FPOs, as I have explained earlier. And thirdly, we can design very specific products based on the end use when we go with the product program approach, because this is unlike any other funding. The assessment of an FPO is entirely different than the regular products that we have. And we also need to keep in mind that this should be either an inventory based or a primary security based kind of lending, rather than any collateral based kind of lending, which is the need of the hour for an FPO. So IndusInd Bank has always believed in collaborative approach, and we believe in domain expertise in any segment that we enter into, and therefore we are very open to partnerships with segment experts. And I mean, because Sammunati is there, I can very well name it and say that we are partnering with Sammunati as well for this. So we are partnering with resource organizations or resource institutions, NGOs and NBFCs, one, to understand this segment and design specific products, two, to partner for co-origination or co-lending of loans, or even under BC model of loans. And third, we are also partnering with our existing corporates in food and agri segment, because we have a large food and agri portfolio as well. We are partnering with them so that they can roll out certain possible efforts to these FPOs in terms of their supply and procurement business, which ensures business continuity for the FPOs. So as a whole, we specifically have created something called as community banking vertical, with separate manpower specifically tackling community based organizations, of which FPO is also a part of it. So the overall objective is that we have a holistic development of the FPO and its members, both in terms of multiplying their incomes, doubling their incomes, better health, education, etc. To cater to the community-based organizations at large. So we expect that this community banking vertical is something which we bank on, which we feel that it will do the needful. In terms of demand, I am sure everyone knows that presently it is not at an optimum level. We expect that the overall demand for credit at this point of time would be anywhere between 1,000 to 1,500 crores. And in terms of quality also, we don't see a specific trend, because this is something which is at a nascent stage of funding. So we need to evolve certain models. And while this is there, we are very optimistic, because as I mentioned earlier, we are looking at this as an opportunity, not just to reach out to the FPOs, but also to reach out to each and every individual member or the farmer interest groups within the FPO as well, so that we reach an optimum level for a business to sustain. As a banker, I am talking of as a banker, we also need to ensure that I have a critical mass of business to sustain that. Only then my model will work. Only then I will be able to further progress and grow the funding to FPOs. So we are very optimistic, and we certainly expect that we will be a market maker in this. Okay. So we are very optimistic on that. So,
thank you for that. Thank you. Good that there is the community banking vertical looks after FPOs as well. The points on external, at least value chain stakeholders being able to invest 10% in equity might improve things around. Good point to consider. I will now turn to Sipika with your what do you call social enterprise investment background from YSB, and looking at these as purely what do you call the social enterprises. What has been the experience, and what are some of the what do you call issues around the capital for.
Thank you so much for having me at this forum. And basically, yes, I think YSB at this point is at the other end of the spectrum, where we are the youngest and the newest players who are trying to make some impact within the FPO space. I mean, for us, we were looking at agriculture as a sector, and to begin with, we make private investments in companies, in institutions which are helping with social enhancement of backward communities, or for that matter, anybody from belonging to an excluded community. So it only became more and more natural when we realized that we were evaluating many agri companies, that if we want to directly work with the farmers, if you want to alleviate their issues and try to bring about some upliftment there, it became more and more clear to us that we have to find a way to work with these FPOs that are basically collections of these farmers who represent them, and it's made up of farmers. So this is something that's we started out, especially last year. We, like I said, we are the youngest here, and we've had conversations with almost everyone in this esteemed panel. So our learnings, of course, from the youngest and the smaller sized fund is a little different, because of course it is not so much about just going out there and setting up a huge field infrastructure and kind of going out and acquiring more and more of these FPOs and making large disbursements. But definitely for us, what has helped us is yes, building our own pipeline, trying to find our own FPOs, but also at the same time looking at the whole co-origination model. So yes, again, we too have partnered with Samanati here and looked at a couple of FPOs and tried to do some funding there. We've worked with the Reliance Foundation and some other capacity building outsets that are working with these FPOs to kind of set up their infrastructure and everything to help grow them. In terms of the capital that we look at that could be helpful, of course, we know a lot about all sorts of grants and other facilities that the government is making available to them also. So yes, grants is definitely something they need, especially for the capacity building piece. But we also feel that debt is something that is very important for them, because it's a free flow of capital which can be designed in so many different ways. It can match their cash flows in many ways. It can match their collateral capacities in so many ways. So definitely debt is something that we also offer, and we do feel that there is a lot of demand out there for it. Having said that, because of the lack of knowledge or their understanding about the different instruments within the debt space itself, it is a little difficult to bring the most optimum product out there for them. Definitely we look at a lot. I mean, what we have observed is that the post-harvest season is the best. It's like something that everybody understands. I think at this point, everyone has made their largest amount of funding during that period and gotten their repayments also on time. But then I think there are other aspects of farming as well that we need to be able to understand how best to basically leverage any of those aspects there. So, like at this point, most of the even post-harvest is happening backing on your purchase orders from your large institutions who are coming to purchase these post-harvest items from the FPOs and the farmers. But of course, when it comes to inputs, etc., we are not. It is not so easy for us to come in out there and be able to fund those things, simply because yes, there's not. We do feel that there's a lacking in terms of building of the credibility of the farmer and the FPO there, mainly because of the whole lack of professionalism which is there currently. It was a great initiative to bring them all together, to help them realize these pricing benefits in terms of selling and buying. But somewhere, if we have to have this proliferation at a much better, faster, and and a much stronger way, then definitely we see the need that there has to be some upliftment in terms of the way they run there, and they become more commercialized. So I also agree with what Mr. Kiran also said. I like the idea. It is the first that I've heard of it, that about bring about 10% equity in there with some institutional value chain players. So things like that, or maybe in the resources, institutions can kind of come on board and help in doing that. And of course, grants can be used. A lot of things to be done. But as a lender, what I feel that I will feel most secure about is if the bookkeeping is in order, and if there is some kind of a grading or credit rating mechanism that can come into place. I mean, I have had a lot of exposure with microfinance, and I've worked in microfinance in many countries too. And definitely India was one of those countries where the credit score in the credit bureau was one of the strongest as compared to some of the other countries. And that really made it so easy for microfinance to just explode in India, because you could blacklist a candidate that has not been cooperating with the model, etc. So somewhere I support that as one of the ideas, so that lenders like us can basically refer to a simple score and understand whether they have been any defaults or not. But these are a lot of ecosystem based things that have to come into play and cushion and support the FPOs in their growth. So that even smaller lenders like us, who have much stricter assessment mechanisms, can actually feel comfortable, and then the flow of capital becomes much easier.
Even when it comes to small lenders and people who have small, resource base, even their financial discipline and building credibility and also confidence at the level of FPOs becomes an important issue. It is just not about funding alone. The quality of demand is determined by the underlying bookkeeping, record keeping, the confidence, the familiarity as well. In fact, in a way, you are talking about FPOs, banking literacy, financial literacy as well, as part of the whole package. Rahul, I think Axis Bank has been at it for quite some time now, and you are having a very dynamic agriculture vertical as well. So how do you see your experience in the context of what we are discussing for FPOs?
Sure, sir. First and foremost, thank you, Srinivasan sir, for hosting us all, and the privilege to be part of this panel. I hope I'm audible. Just do a check before I proceed.
You are.
Great. So, I completely actually agree with most of the comments made by both Kiran and Sipika, because we've seen, and by virtue of us doing this for a couple of years, we've seen this play out. So let me just talk about how do we participate in this space. We participate not just as a bank, but we have an Axis Bank Foundation, and you mentioned it, various FPOs are in different stages of their life cycle. So our foundation today is concentrated in the capacity building, in providing, working with partners who in turn work in professionalizing these FPOs, and they do it with a whole lot of FPOs from across the country. That's how the foundation plays. The bank looks at FPOs purely from a commercial lens, and we've tried various models. So we've tried the models of directly lending to FPOs for, say, input purchase, or for increasing their capacities for, say, a cold storage or warehouse. Now, we've not had very good experience, let me be blunt upfront on that side. Where we've had a reasonably good experience is where we have tied in with the FPOs in the marketing leg. Once the goods have been shipped, and when there is a purchaser at the other end. We have done this extensively in dairy. We've got about 350 odd crores of lending there, and we have done it also with a couple of players on the perishable side. So we've had a favorable experience, and I think Sipika was mentioning this. The post-harvest leg seems to be the most attractive leg to participate, and we've had reasonable success over there, and we continue to make investments over there. When you look at the challenges, I think again, points were made over here. The managerial capability, the overall decisiveness of the management, the kind of there is constraints on the capital position, though you might have quasi equity and grants. But after a point of debt has to really follow, there is capital constraints. and normally lenders also look for some kind of security, which is again not forthcoming. So I do believe these are constraints, but the good thing is that we have models in place, and Samunati thankfully joined another subsidiary of ours, which is Invoice Smart, which is a trades platform, and we are seeing how a platform like Trades can also bring in debt, right? So a lot of FPOs have been brought into a platform via Samunati. So the traditional forms of lending may not work at the moment, but to start with, at the marketing leg, there's already been proof of the pudding, and the new instruments like co-lending, co-origination, the Trades platform are all good starts, and hopefully will be, kind of lighthouses for us in the future to go down this path.
Thanks, all. I think quite what do you call blunt about the fact that traditional lending doesn't yet work. You have to find other interesting new ways of what do you call putting funds in, but that has its own learning curve, the costs of design, and then making the process work. Yeah. Arindam, I think in many ways, Rabo is the foundation of FPOs in more ways than one. You people have been at it for probably the longest among people in this group, and you have tried out everything that is possible, from lending to grants to guarantees to nudging several participants and partners to do something or other. Yeah, I think the field is now open to you.
Thank you, sir. It's a privilege to be speaking in this panel. I would start off with a slightly different perception of FPCs. I'm talking of only, the modern age farmer producer organizations.
Yeah.
The first comment is that I would like to see them as business entities and not as social enterprises, because unless we see that, mainstream financial institutions are not going to unlock capital, and right now they are caught between the image of being a social kind of an initiative and a quasi commercial entity, and that leads to a lot of confusion in the market. So that's one comment. Second comment I'd like to make is the question you asked on what kind of financial products are required. I would say for an FPC, the very rationale of existence is that they need to provide services to their members. If they don't do that, there's no rationale for them to exist. So for them, it's necessary to get in inputs to be able to sell the produce of the members. And for that, working capital and trade finance facility is a must. If they can't develop it, FPCs over a time will wither away because they won't be able to garner enough members' interest to sustain the business of the FPC. So because of the design of the FPC, it's necessary to have debt and trade finance facilities available. Now, over a period of time, of course, infrastructure for any kind of value addition or to address the issues of food loss and all will need to be created. We are seeing some traction in the markets of term loans being availed of to build up some rudimentary, infrastructure at the FPC level. But the most promising structure I see out there is the post-harvest financing. That's the warehouse receipt financing, something that Arya and Argos, they do very, very efficiently, because that's where the risk is not on the balance sheet of the FPC, but it's more on the commodities, and mainstream financial institutions are more comfortable doing that. Having said that, the small ticket size and the remoteness of the transaction is still an issue. Hopefully, technology is going to address that. Now, on the supply side, I would say a comment which was made earlier, that it's hugely dominated only by two institutions, that's Samunati and by NAPKISAN. They have by far the largest portfolio in the country today. The third player is very, very small compared to these two, with Avanti being an extremely, extremely interesting entity, which is coming up very, very quickly and, putting more exposures into the FPC space and their member space. Now, I would say from a bank's perspective, from a mainstream bank's perspective, a point which was made earlier, first is they need to be able to see scale. Without scale, it's very, very difficult for mainstream banks to put in the capital. And I think Kiran mentioned a demand of 1,000 crores. I think that's pretty big. I would say, let's look at the bankable demand. I think it will be much, much less. That's what is, keeping a lot of mainstream banks away from the sector, other than the credit and the non-credit, the governance leadership issue. So it will still take some time for the mainstream banks to get into the sector. And the best way forward for them is through the co-origination or co-lending route, where the leading NBFCs, they do the origination and monitoring because they have the expertise to do that. The mainstream banks will still struggle with the the requirements of security and all the other governance issues. So it's going to take time, and the key challenge is on quality. Again, in India, I mean, that's a challenge for almost all the development finance sectors, because while we talk of numbers, while we talk of quantification of number of SPCs, number of how many of them are qualitatively good, and that is the question that we need to answer. How many of them are really bankable? So a lot of work needs to go to make the SPCs understand of when they are bankable. The last point is on the capital. That's the equity capital and the talk of subordinate and mezzanine capital. Now, this is a challenge for any cooperative structure anywhere in the world. You are constrained by the capital to grow beyond a point of time. Thus, mezzanine capital or subordinate capital will work to some extent, but the question we need to ask the mainstream banks, whether it's a SBI, PNB or a Axis Bank, is whether they'll be treated as capital when they look at these entities for financing. That's the critical question to be asked. Otherwise, they'll find the capitalization level to be extremely thin to be able to lend. So these are some of the issues which are there in the market. And I would say right now it's Samunnati and NAPKISAN which is leading the way so far as financing is concerned, with ARIA and Argos showing the post-harvest way, and with the play of technology which is getting into the sector. I expect financing to get a lot better, because better information would be available. The information asymmetry would not be there. I'll stop here for the time being, sir.
Thanks, Arindam. I think a very exemplary overview of some of the development that are taking place, and also the institutional landscape. And the point that you make about what is the bankability of the demand which is there. In fact, I was reading a study report. I don't remember who are the authors, from some research institute. They have taken the register of companies filings for 2019-20. They have said that exposure of non-financial sector based on registered charges, it's about 57 crores to FPCs. Of this, 13% has come from banks. So you could look at how tiny it could be.
Exactly.
So maybe 2021 will be a different story, and maybe it might probably expand by 10 times each passing year next 5 years, hopefully. But then what you are saying is relevant. Is this big enough for banks to really get interested, invest in building, say, a pool of manpower, set up systems, set up processes? So like in the case of SHGs, it took about 10 years, but then by then the program had been hijacked. That's a very different issue. I think I hope something of that sort doesn't happen. All existing players and new entrants get a very good chance of working at different perches of what do you call the FPO space. I think shifting to the second part, which is in a way connected to the first, I'll turn to Rahul first. You see, there are a number of enablers that are out there in the market. Even the mezzanine capital, which Sushila earlier talked about, which was again highlighted by Arindam, is also one of those. Have you used any of these, or have you seen these being used by any of the FPOs, which help, say, a bank to say, okay, I can actually take an exposure on more certain terms? These things have a better way of reaching the FPO for their funding requirements.
No, actually, we haven't, looked at it from that way. As I mentioned, our limited route, other than directly lending, was by opening the Threads route, right? And by Threads, yes, the Threads platform. And specifically with Samunnati, I think we were one of the first banks to onboard FPOs on the Threads platform. I think the good thing over here was, because we didn't look at it as the normal factoring route, we looked at it as a reverse factoring route. And because Samunnati was able to come in over there as the buyer, it was easier for us to onboard FPOs, right? Because the due diligence was not so much more on the FPOs, but it was more because Samunnati was the buyer, right, over there. Now, what that also did was, see, just the platform being there is not enough. You need banks to start bidding on the platform, right? So we did not just participate as a platform creator, but we were one of the first to also start bidding for these invoices of FPOs on the platform, right? So I think that has created, and post us doing it, there are a lot of other banks who have come on board and are bidding for each FPO's invoices that are getting posted on that platform. I think Anirudh made a very important point for this to become really interesting from a scale perspective as well as from a capability and competencies perspective. I think co-origination and co-lending could be another route which makes a lot of sense, because banks would want to get that visibility, or would take a bit of time to build that competency to do all the due diligence on an FPO. Today, a lot of those data sets could be with the NBFCs or with partners who are able to do that. So yes, I think these are the two routes that seem attractive to pursue for the moment. Besides that, a lot of RRBs today also can lend to FPOs. A lot of through instruments like PSLCs or IBPCs, these are treasury instruments.
Yeah.
But because PSL is becoming that much more important right now and it's so scarce in the market, we as a bank have been subscribing to a lot of these instruments, be it IBPCs or PSLCs. And I think by virtue of those participants, be it the RRBs or other entrants who are closer to FPOs, if they increase their lending, us big banks by virtue of participating in these treasury instruments would also ensure that fund flow is that much more accessible.
Sushil, I will now turn to you because the bank has so much of bandwidth to do several things. As an
Yes,
NBFC, say use of any of these enablers, say like guarantees. How does it work, and what has been your experience by using this? Are we able to actually step up what we might do with an FPO?
Yes, sir. So I'll talk about guarantees. Before I talk about guarantees, I'll also talk about the products which NAPKISAN is offering. We have a customized product. It's not like one size fits all product. We've divided the FPOs into 3 categories. The startup FPOs, which are just 6 months old, they have one balance sheet, they have at least minimum 2 lakh share capital, and so on and so forth. And we have also categorized into the growing FPOs, and the last category is matured FPOs. So based on their turnover, we have it is either 5 times or 10 times or 20 times of their share capital is what we lend. So this is a part of our policy of how to fit in the FPOs to come to NAPKISAN for borrowing, and it has been mighty successful. Now this has been again successful because of guarantees. Guarantees which SFSC, we are one of the largest beneficiary of SFSC guarantee, NABARD guarantee, RABO guarantee, Tamil Nadu government and Odisha government also we signed into MOUs. But there we haven't made much progress, but basically it has been SFSC and NABARD, and of late it has been RABO guarantee. And it is a win-win situation both for the lender and for the borrower, because till such time he can give the collateral, they will be able to borrow. And this is precisely the barometer that we are setting, where FPOs will reach a certain stage, and that's when all the supply from the lender's point of view will step in. That is when the scale will come up. That is when the sustainability of FPOs will also be ensured. But I also have a small suggestion that probably these guarantees now can also pitch into partial guarantee scheme. Because once you're used to a complete guarantee, maybe 2 times, 3 times renewals, it should not become a habit for an FPO to come forward to take off the loans without offering collateral. So as the FPO is scaling high, maybe it crosses 1 crore or so, whether the guarantor can come up with a product where some amount of collateral and some amount of guarantee can come in, and that will be the stepping stone to the next basis. This is how we have been able to scale up our portfolio also from time to time, year on year. That's it.
So thanks, Sushil. I think since quite a bit about guarantees have come through, I think Arindam, I will turn to you. My question is slightly different to you on this. You've seen all these enablers at work for some time. What do you think had been the most effective so far? And what do you think has the maximum potential as we go ahead?
Okay, sir. I'll answer your question. Prior to that, one fact I think many people are not aware of. We did the first transaction for the first FPC in India, working capital loan of about 70 lakhs. That was a point of time neither NAPKISA nor Samundra were active. And we had to provide 100% guarantee for the principal and 1 quarter cover for the interest to get the first transaction done for a FPC. It was organic cotton FPC near Mysore, and since had done that transaction. HD Kotte, exactly. Yeah. So Myreda promoted. That was the first transaction done in the Indian market. I would say guarantees have played a big part in the financing which has happened so far. As Sushila mentioned, the SFSC, guarantee, it is cumbersome in some manner in terms of the terms and conditions, but having said that, a coverage of 85% and a very nominal fees makes it extremely attractive. The guarantees we offer are extremely flexible, and we have done more than 140, 160 transactions in the Indian market through portfolio guarantees, one-off guarantees, the first loss, second loss, the portfolio guarantee, partial guarantee structures. And the performance has been extremely good. Pre-COVID, we have just had one case of a default, pre-COVID. Of course, COVID has hit us harder for many reasons. I would say guarantee has played a major part, and especially if you look at the NAPKISA lending also, they enjoyed the exclusive, the NABARD guarantee. So that all this helped for a lot of financing institutions in India to be able to take the first view, because there was no collateral available, there was no security available. So, I mean, any day a financing institution would prefer a sovereign kind of a guarantee or a Rabobank guarantee to any kind of security being offered by the FPC. So that has played a critical role. The role is not yet over. I think it will carry on for another 3-4 years. That guarantees will play a very powerful role for the working capital part and for the some term loans. I would say way forward is to entice the mainstream banks to come in, because beyond a point of time, for any business, including the FPCs, they need more than lending services. They require transaction services, they require liability services. And that's why it's very important for mainstream banks to be able to take their first bets in the market. And once that happens, I think it is going to be a game changer, because multiple products could be offered to the FPC to make their operations a lot more efficient. That is currently not happening in the Indian market. So I would like to see more mainstream banks coming in with multiple products, not only lending.
Okay. That they are very important point that you make. I just was wondering, as you were saying, the guarantor offers a development kind of an intervention. On that, others take a commercial decision to give a loan and take. And what is it that the guarantor understands that is superior to lender who has a loan exposure that makes the guarantee work? It's a question for later, but I was wondering about that part.
Sure.
Yeah, Kiran, Arindam said that, look, a lot more can be done by mainstream banks entering the space. Yeah. So how do you see the enabler's role in the helping the banks doing this? Yeah.
So yes, certainly I agree with Arindam. One, mainstream bankers, given the current size of this entire FPO funding, really it becomes a challenge for the mainstream bankers, because there is not a critical mass for the mainstream bankers to be interested in that volume kind of a thing. So slightly differing with Arindam's views in terms of it, this being a commercial call. Now here comes the angle of a financial inclusion, or a community based kind of a justification that we need to bring in. And then also look at community at large, and then do this kind of funding. So that is where this becomes very important. Given this, there is certainly the model of co-lending, or say even a BC kind of a model, is something which I guess, in my opinion, the bankers should adapt. Because that really makes sense in terms of the network, the reach, and the expertise that our partner brings onto the table. And therefore, the banks will be more comfortable in doing such kind of funding to the FPOs. So Having said this, while I agree that FLDGs or say the guarantees are play some catalytic role in the flow of credit to FPOs, I have a slightly different kind of guarantee to talk about today. If you look at I mean, most of the FPOs are into input or procurement of the agri produce so that they have a better bargaining power. Now, if you look at many of the interventions that are happening, very few of the banks or NBFCs are into the space of warehouse receipt funding. Now, what I feel is if there is a government guarantee, and the reason why only few of them are doing this warehouse receipt funding with FPOs, and specific to FPOs. So, why they are doing very few of them are because when it comes to warehouse receipt funding, where I have commodity which is stored in a warehouse, and then at a later point of time, I need to the farmer FPO need to sell it. There is always a risk that if the prices do not go up, and because the management of an FPO may not have been at a matured level, there could be some fallout in terms of whether they have to sell the commodity or not at that particular price. And I have practically seen this with few of the FPOs when they had objections to sell the commodity at such a price. So here I wanted to very specifically bring out a particular model where we have even given a representation to the government as well through a World Bank group. So what we had envisaged was if what generally happens is today in India there is about 1 lakh crores of MSP purchases that happen year on year for various commodities. Now our concept is that rather than the government spending on this 1 lakh crores of subsidy for MSP procurement, what we would suggest is at least as a pilot, they can start doing this model with FPOs, wherein the suggestion is that government gives a guarantee to purchase this particular commodity which is being funded by the banks to the FPOs after say a period of 6 months. So what happens generally is when the government purchases it during the season, it really doesn't make too much of a sense for the farmer, because farmer is only expecting, okay, I get only an MSP price, I'm selling it in season. But what generally happens is during season for any commodity, the prices will be lower, many a times lower than the MSP, or even sometimes it is majorly purchased at MSP price, even if it is traders. But the concept that we are trying to bring in is, if the government can give a guarantee that they will procure in case any of the FPO does not is unable to repay because of lower prices, if government can give a guarantee that they will procure it at a MSP rate, what we can do or what banks can do is they fund on warehouse receipt basis to all the FPOs who would like to procure, store it in the warehouses and wait until they get a better price in future. Today, many of them are not in this field. I mean, the partners are not into this field because they do not have that mechanism to assess the risk when they are holding a commodity. So, if that risk is mitigated, then I think that kind of guarantee is expected.
Yeah, you are saying so there should be a price guarantee that is effective from the government to make the farmers
tide over price guarantee. It's a price guarantee. It is not price guarantee. I am saying it is procurement guarantee.
Yeah, that's what I am saying. If I am unable to sell this, government will step in and procure at that price, which is a viable.
Exactly.
Price. That's what you are saying.
So, So how it will benefit the farmer is the FPO is that if the prices after 6 months down the line are higher, then they benefit. Even if it is
otherwise not under law.
They are not under law.
Point taken. We will try and examine this a little further. Yes, Deepika, how any of these enablers look to you, or you think there is something even more basic than this? What will enable greater flow might be trying to build the capacity of the FPCs to understand what they are dealing in and how to give comfort to the lender, or any of these enablers seem to work in your case?
Definitely, in terms of enabling, yes, I think everyone has covered it so far. Co-origination and co-lending is definitely one of the easier ways to go out, because if we don't have such a great field infrastructure, then it helps that the other players have, and we can, leverage on that. But both of them are equally important, capacity building too. To Arindam sir's point, like last month, in fact, there was this meet that I went for the RRA network, the Rain-Fed Farmers Association, and there were some of the FPOs, farmers who were also there, and they were trying to make a strong point about how the government should look at them as a social sector and all of those things, and they should get more favor from all sorts of authorities and everything, and borrowing is so expensive for them and everything. And then at that point, like we did realize that, and Arindam sir also pointed out that the whole the feel of being a social social entity is also making them feel like there's a sense of entitlement, that we only should get those free funds and we should be helped with those things only. That when the fund is readily available here, there are so many NBFCs and banks ready to give. All you have to do is like just improve your systems, etc. a little more, and the cost is not that high. Yes, it may look high at 14, 15, 16, 20, 18%ish, but you're looking at that at an annual rate. But if you're talking about working capital, these are all broken down already. There are so many products which are already broken down. So over a month, you may not be even paying so much money. So I think that that mindset shift is very important. When the minute they start looking at them as commercial entities, where they're like, okay, we are here to do business and we're here to engage with all the bigger institutions. They believe in the strength of their own collectiveness, that we can actually negotiate with those other institutional buyers at a good price, etc. So they actually start looking at them as such entities, is when there will be more power to them, and hence there'll be easier flow of capital and everything. So I think that apart from just capacity building, somewhere that message has to go out, that there was a reason that such a special entity status was given to you. You're not just a collection of farmers who are just sitting under a tree, but you are actually a very valid commercial entity out there. So if those things change, then what happens is they keep waiting for that free money, that grant to come in, and in that time they keep us engaged. So we're like doing our due diligence, and we're trying to reach out to their buyers and everything. We're doing all the hard work, and then suddenly they're like, oh, by the way, we had applied for the grant and now it's arrived, so we don't need your money at this point. And then like all the efforts are like, okay, fine, we have to come back at a later time. So they definitely need those grants and everything, but it would be much nicer if the whole attitude is just waiting for the free money and not growing your business to its actual potential, when you could just spend a little money here and little effort in building yourself as a more commercial and a serious entity. That it would be very nice if somewhere that change could come about. So yeah, that's from my side.
Thanks, Deepika. That's very useful, looking at the reality right on the ground when we look at nascent institution. But also the grant thing is a supply side infliction on these people. It's not necessarily their own. There are lots of stories one could talk about. Yeah, I come to the last round. This is a very brief round. I want a 2-line statement from each of you. What is that one thing that you would try and either fix or create to make things better on the ground for the FPO, and in the process to the people who supply capital to them? I start with you, Deepika, this time.
Sure. Okay, well, things that we could sort of help out with, and again, like how Kiran sir and them talked about it, that the FPOs don't just need the fund support, but also more on transaction advisory, etc. So by that, I mean, it's a huge host of things, but what I did like in one of the recent transactions we were looking at with an FPO, and Samunati kind of initiated this. It was not, they didn't need to do it, but they actually brought in PwC to do an audit for the FPO. And we got that audit report too, because this was a co-lending round. And we were very impressed that there was like this 40-pager report, which is so in-depth and it was so beautifully done. And there is talent out there, and there are institutions who have expertise in this, and you just bring them in. Yes, there must have been some cost involved. But if this could be sort of customized for FPO, so that could so these kind of reports, audits, etc., could actually help in better help NBFCs with lesser capacities like us to be able to leverage on these and then just go ahead and allow the free flow of funds. So we'd like if there's some transaction advisory there that can go out, sir.
Right, Deepika. Kiran, I now turn to you. Actually, the limit is exactly 2 sentences. Deepika completed it with only about 10 more. Yeah.
So my 2 sentences would be that the PSL weightages, if FPO funding, the weightage given for PSL can be doubled, I guess most of the banks would also be interested. The second point is that instead of interest subvention, controlling through interest subvention, because we understand that the risk is higher in this kind of lending, the same interest subvention fund can be probably used to give subsidies or government guarantees for setting up post-harvest processes. So that will actually increase the income of the FPO, help in doubling the income, and also meet our interest obligation. So that will also create a local economy.
Okay. Thanks, Kiran. Rahul?
Yeah, so I don't know whether I have one point, but I think just in conclusion, what I'd like to say is that, and what most of us have discussed today, we know that we want the FPOs to reach an inflection point. They have not yet reached there. And for them to reach there, I think part of the deliberations was about, and parallels were drawn to the microfinance industry, right? What happened? I think the unleashing of the entrepreneurial energy, that is very important. How do we as actors create that environment, and how do we kind of take these farmers who are producers? We talked about, maybe some nominal 10% share in capital by environment players. So how do we, the kind of point I'd leave in conclusion, how do we actually get that entrepreneurial energy in the producers unleashed so that the FPOs can be as attractive for banks and lenders to participate?
Okay. Thanks, Rahul. That's a very valid, important thought. Sushila?
Your question is really tough. What is that immediate point? We have just begun, FPOs have just begun their story. So as Deepika and my earlier speaker has said, I will touch upon 3 points, and I also want to highlight that we have been able to do so much of business, not as a pure lending institution. Alongside, we have been doing a lot of capacity building and handholding. So these things have to continue, and probably they have to be accelerated further. And we within MAP Kisan are concentrating on 2 important points. Share capital has to go up, has to go up, has to go up. I think very recently when both of us, I think we have spoken where there was one FPO with about 2,000 members and a huge turnover. The shocking point is that each member has got 100 rupees share capital. That was the state of affairs.
You are lucky. Yeah. There are several places it is only 10 rupees.
10 rupees. So
especially the older FPCs. Okay.
Yeah, when you have 2,000 members, your turnover is going up, and your turnover is going up, and you are able to access finance only because you have been lucky to keep on accessing guarantee year after year. So this is not sustainable. So highlighting the point, share capital has to go up, and arriving at business plans. This is a very big challenge. And since we have an experience of state government guarantee with 2 states, we want to harp upon state governments not to come forward with guarantees, because 10,000 FPO guarantee scheme will come into the picture. Instead, whether state government can come forward in offering interest subvention scheme for FPOs, so that you can encourage more suppliers to come into the picture. So I couldn't give you 1 point answer, sir. It's a 5 to 6 point
That's fine, Ruchila. Yeah, Arindam?
My 1 point would be adoption of digital technology. It has many ramifications, and one of them is better access to finance.
Okay. I know you must at least have a list of around 12. I'm so sorry that I'm asking everyone to prioritize. I remember saying that whenever you start something new, before you start, you realize that you should have done some 5 things before that. Right? There's a feeling, I should have done that before I start. I think when we are looking at the FPO space, even with all the experience of the financial sector, development professionals, we find there are lots of things fairly small, some are fairly big. They need to have been fixed, and they could have been fixed easily had this or that been done. Overall, I think it has been a fascinating discussion given the time, but because of the expertise you all bring to the table, some of the more, what do you call, the highlights, as I see, quite a number of them I have noted down. One is that let us have a differentiated understanding of the FPOs in the place, which came out very strongly from Sipika and Sushila. You have different things to offer. Don't offer baby food to somebody who is an adolescent, and vice versa. So that's one. And the advice is you start focusing on post-harvest space before you move into other aspects, because that's much easier. The risks are identified. There is a visible commodity on which you can peg the risk. But there also how you deal with, Kiran had quite a number of suggestions on how you deal with even the post-harvest thing, because there are market volatilities can create issues. Then treat FPO lending as a commercial kind of a lending. You separate it from any other development work that you will do with them, because the loan is a commercial one. Look at those terms. So I do not know how you marry the interest subvention and this, but then we always find ways of doing that. And the guarantees which are there, we can't say for specific institutions they are forever. The new one that come, they may require an introduction to a financial institution, but then don't treat guarantees as a permanent crutch. They should throw away the crutch and start working on their own sometimes. So how you gear the guarantee structures to facilitate this. Also coming very strongly from, I think, Rahul, Arindam and Kiran, how the new ways of trying to finance, not only relying on the traditional ways of putting loans in. So you rely on whatever is available as a collateral substitute. Can you try and do, whether it's invoice discounting through trades or relying on certain kinds of social collateral in order to put money in. And of course, the demand and the requirement of new products such as mezzanine capital and all. And underlying all this, do we actually create enough of an informed base among the borrowing FPOs, which Sipika has been time and again bringing forth? Even as we engage, as financing institution, can we spend some more time educating them and doing the necessary kind of studies, due diligence of them, and telling them, not necessarily to understand from a lender's point of view, as a borrower, what you could do to improve. So next round when you go, in what ways you will benefit. I think it has been a fabulous round, and I think the participants would really benefit from this. If they have any questions, they are free to ask it of us now. To the extent feasible, we will try and answer this question. What's not feasible, we would take a rain check. Maybe we will respond to you offline over mail, whatever. And thank you all once again for the entire set of panelists and the participants. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.